if you really are overwhelmed by the whole thing, at least console yourself that you can save a penny on a pint of beer because of the changes to duty on draft beer in a pub.
Get radio breakfast with Rich Smith.
The budget was announced by Rachel Reeves yesterday in the House of Commons, and still we are kind of just sort of settling down and just trying to unpack various different facets of it. Fortunately, I don't have to do that. I've got someone who is far better qualified for that than my good self. Angus Aston, Director and Senior Financial Planner at Wise Investment. Angus, it's that time of year again when I say welcome back.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Hope I can be of use in unpicking the vast amount of stuff in yesterday's budget.
Yeah, I mean, this was an interesting budget, wasn't it? It's been the longest protracted budget from when a government was in power to actually dealing with a budget. That brings with it connotations, and that brings with it, maybe, thoughts have been processed and it needs to be things. And we've been drip fed, tidbits of information leading up to the budget. And the big one on Tuesday was, of course, the minimum wage rising by a fair whack. Shall we start there, because we knew about that on Tuesday?
Let's start there. So £12.21 an hour is where the minimum wage, living wage, has been put up to. Quite a significant increase, well above inflation. And I mean, either depending on your political viewpoint, that's a great thing for low-paid workers in the country, or it's a disaster for, I exaggerate of course, but it's for businesses that employ those people. It makes life tougher for them. I'm not gonna comment on that. People can make up their own minds, but the living wage has been a thing, a principle now for many years. So that's going to have an impact across the board, I think.
Yeah, and this, obviously the point is to get people also back into work as well, and kind of going from that. There was mentions of a vast number of people who are economically inactive, and this is probably a carrot and stick approach to try and.
This is very much part of, I think, Labour's sort of manifesto and way of thinking. If we're being political about it, in that people can be supported into work, so some of the spending is directed towards that. And then they make forecasts on the back of that of how much better the public finance will be as a result. But I think the theory and the practice may turn out to be different on that.
Yeah, exactly. And it remains to be seen, which lanes and which way things go, of course. And we will sort of we await to see all of that.
Yes, we do.
Let's move on to something that will be affecting all of us that pay taxes. We had tax bombs raining down on us yesterday, although it feels like a large proportion of the tax bombs that we're hearing about are falling onto businesses, and maybe a large amount kind of falling onto the general public as well, but maybe not quite as hefty as we thought, maybe, Angus.
Right, so there's a lot to unpack here. So the Chancellor in the Labour manifesto tied one and a half arms behind her back by not touching income tax, employee national insurance and VAT, which account for 75% of our tax revenue, hence one and a half arms, leaving not a lot of room for manoeuvre. So there was a vast amount of speculation about various things, but the one that sort of emerged was the increase in employers' national insurance. But it wasn't actually as much as some people had supposed, at least in the headline rate. It went up by 1.2%, not by 2.0%. But what probably wasn't quite so anticipated was the significant reduction in the threshold where it starts to be paid.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a smart one. It does. That's another effect on sort of business employing relatively lowly paid people, which are going to be in the retail, hospitality, leisure, and perhaps care sectors and others. So that is going to make things tough for them. I mean, the other comment probably is that with employers having to pay more money out in tax on employment, then they might find other ways to claw that money back. perhaps
Yeah.
over coming years by not paying people as much in the way of pay increases they might otherwise have done. So yeah,
It's
there's always moving parts with taxes, aren't there?
there.
But
There is.
that's half the 40 billion right there.
Yeah, yeah, and the goalposts always move with all of this kind of things, and you hear advantages for things and disadvantages for others, and businesses feel. I'm making a general statement. Businesses might feel that this is going to be a tough budget. I know you sort of alluded to this hospitality sector as well, landlords as well, sort of included in all of this, and an extension of all of that, inheritance as well. These are the areas that maybe this morning people are in those areas are kind of going, this has hit me hardest.
Right. Well, so I mean, I thought it'd be worth looking more generally because there was a lot of speculation about a lot of different stuff that might be coming in. But you mentioned pensions, inheritance tax, mixed bag there. But people were talking about you wouldn't be allowed to take any tax-free cash from your pension anymore. That's not there. You'd be reducing the amount you can put into your pensions. That's not there. Employers' national insurance would apply to employer pension contributions. That's not there. ISA allowances for savers would be reduced or capped in some way, not there. You still got the same allowances for inheritance tax, and you can still give the same amounts under the same rules as you could before. So no changes there either. Fuel duty, that was another one that was not mentioned earlier, but no, that's been frozen as well. So no touch there. Capital gains tax has gone up, not by as much as maybe people had worried might be the case. 18 and 24% rates rather than 20 and 40%, which is what they were at the end of the last Labour government. There are changes to inheritance tax in some allowances for certain types of investments, agricultural property and business investments. So there's some detail there that still needs to be figured out. And then pension, you mentioned inheritance tax, pension funds being brought into inheritance tax. That's going to be a big one for people like us trying to advise clients as to how best to deal with that. Never mind the complexities of actually implementing it, but that's not for this morning, I don't think.
No, it's not for this morning, and a lot of these things maybe have a sort of 5-month window to be able to kind of put into place.
2 years for that one.
Oh, 2 years for that one. Good. Another quick thing I quite like when we do this. I always ask Angus actually to kind of go, look, I mean, you're looking at everything and seeing everything. Is there anything that you've seen that actually we might have missed? Because as you said, there's so much going on that we knew that this was going to be a big budget in a lot of respects because of the amount of time, as I said at the start, and also kind of being prepared for it. Going, look, we need to sort things out. Is there anything that maybe once the fog has cleared that is in the budget there?
Well, I mean, first thing that occurs to me is if you really are overwhelmed by the whole thing, at least console yourself that you can save a penny on a pint of beer because of the changes to duty on draft beer in a pub, a very small return back to the retail, hospitality and leisure sector there. But I think we're talking about big numbers here, so I thought it would be. I thought I'd give you a little quiz, Rich, actually, because on the very last pages of the budget document, it lists what we spend our money on.
Right.
Okay. So I'm going to put. So what do you think the biggest line in the accounts is of all the sectors that the government spends money on?
Okay, well, as you know, Angus, I mean, I diligently read the entire budget, but I did miss out those last few pages. So thank you for that. What does the government spend the most money on? I guess the NHS must be up there.
Right, that's pretty much everyone's answer. That's number 2. Number 1 is what they call social protection, which is state pensions and benefits.
Right,
379 billion a year. Health comes in 100 billion less, 277 billion.
Wow.
Education, barely half of that, 146 billion. And line 4, the next biggest, interest on our debt. Interest on our national debt, 126 billion.
Wow.
So there we go. That's where our money's going. We can get into the arguments about the cost of debt. Maybe that's again not for today, but
Yeah, but that, I mean, that is instantly, that's fascinating. I mean, that is a top. I think if you were posing that question to absolutely anyone, I reckon 80% of people would fall into that category of just instantly saying, well, all we
the
hear
NHS.
it is how much the
It's
NHS is.
semantics a bit because you could split out state pensions and working age benefits as two different things. But anyway, they're lumped together in the account. So there we are.
Well, there we go. Well, a wonderful quiz. Thank you, Angus, for that.
Sorry about that.
I think I passed with flying colours. And there was, it's funny with the budget and everything, and we're having a conversation about it right now. I was having a conversation just in the pub yesterday with people. We weren't mentioning the 1p off a pint because it was quite expensive what we were drinking. But anyway, by the way, actually, stamp duty. Now, this is it changed for people buying houses. The reason why it was up in conversation, my wife's sister bought a house and moved in literally a week ago. Now, it would be slightly different if they were moving in a week later, coming into November, because stamp duty has risen quite dramatically, really.
It's risen particularly on second homes, though. I think the main
Right.
rates buying your own home are unchanged. So if you're
Okay.
buying a second home, you'll pay what there used to be a 3% surcharge is now a 5% surcharge.
Because you said
And
5%.
the political point is to try and sort of shift the balance to give a bit more of an advantage to people buying their own home rather than a rental property or a holiday home, whatever.
Well,
Yeah, it's a tax. There it is. Actually, I mean, it was the Conservatives introduced that surcharge at 3%, so Labour have just raised it to 5%.
there we go. Angus,
There
we
we
could
are.
have done with you in the pub last night. That's all I could say.
Well, it would have been a pleasure, but there we are.
There we are. Angus, thank you for kind of demystifying and just breaking down a few of the tidbits from the budget. I know that this is a very busy day for you after a budget. So I will say thank you ever so much for joining us this morning. And I hope that's helped a load of people listening this morning. Thanks, Angus.
Hope so. Thanks, Rich. Good to see you.